So getting into our first slide here, in regards to the project description, what you want to do is that you want to describe what the problem statement is and how is your project going to solve that project statement. Another good idea to do is to state what the core benefit of the overall project is. And if you can justify some financials, like for example, here in the third sentence where we're describing that after 5 years, there will be a $10 million benefit. If you can quantify what the financial benefits are in regards to either the revenue that this project will create or the savings that this project will create, that's more to your advantage. In this chart here toward the bottom, what I did here is that I split this out into phases. And what you want to do here is that you want to list what's in scope. And I just kind of gave an example here regarding a PPM tool that's being developed from scratch. That's going to be part of the organization. And for this PPM tool, once it's implemented, the older systems that currently exist will be decommissioned. And that's where the savings for the company will come into. So what I did here is that for the items in scope, each particular phase is going to have particular deliverables associated with that scope. One thing I would strongly recommend you put in your presentation is the last item there, the items that are out of scope. And the reason why you want to do this is to avoid confusion, because if you don't list the items that are out of scope, somebody somewhere, especially on the stakeholder side, they may be making the assumption that something's going to be implemented so that from the beginning, your stakeholders are on the same footing as you are. Then from here, you'll create a RACI chart. And what RACI stands for is responsible, accountable, consults, and informed. And the difference is that the accountable, the A aspect of it is that you're the one who owns that particular activity or task that's listed on the left. So for the example here, the business project manager would be accountable for the end-to-end project planning, as well as the managerial operating system of the project. And managerial operating system, you can kind of think of that as the process that would be followed by the project. So you have that there. The business PM would be accountable for that. And then your R would represent the people who are responsible for that. And in this case, the end-to-end project planning would be the project manager from IT, the stakeholders from the business side, as well as the business project manager. And the difference between being accountable and responsible is that the accountable person is the one responsible to deliver that particular task or deliverable. But the people who are responsible, basically, you can say that they have skin in the game in the sense that they are responsible for contributing to the deliverable that the business PM is accountable for. So the IT project manager, business analysts, and stakeholders, they must contribute to the success of the business project manager to deliver the end-to-end project planning portion. Now, the C relates to consults. And what that means is that if you look at the second line there as an example, the architect consults in regards to the IT project planning. And the reason why that's so is that maybe the architect needs to investigate as to when this project is completed, how would the system architecture look like? For example, our new PPM tool might interface with other systems. So the architect consults the project managers as well as the rest of the team as to how that's going to look like and whether the project managers need to make that as part of the project plan, like those particular integration activities. I is for informed, and that basically means that the people that have eyes, they're just informed about those tasks on the left. So for an example, the product owner is informed of the business requirements documentation as to whether, what's the status of that documentation, has it been approved, and etc. So they're more informed. It's not that they take any action on that particular activity or task. Up at the top, you have the roles. Ideally, for these roles, you want to have one person defined. You don't want to have a group defined up here at the top where it says business and IT. You like these items here, SME, business analyst, product owner, you want to have an actual person's name there. And that's more effective. So in that way, there's no confusion again. If you're using groups, each individual person knows exactly what they need to do. Now, one final note on this RACI chart I want to mention is that you should put this RACI chart together with the project team beforehand so that you have this chart ready for the kickoff session. Because if you try to do this during the kickoff session, it's very time consuming because there's going to be a lot of discussion around who should be responsible for what. So that's just a heads up on this RACI chart. Next, we have the change management and governance process. And in regards to change management, you want to have a process in place and detailed out here where how do you handle requirements that have changed or changed requirements, but those requirements need to be implemented despite the fact that they need, despite the fact that you have a change in the requirements. So you need an operating process around that for this project to handle the change requests. And then the next thing is you want to outline some of the other governance activities, such as backlog reviews. And you have some tasks here. You want to detail out what the backlog reviews are going to entail and what the process is. And then also you want to detail out the specific updates to the BRD, or if you're not leveraging a business requirements document, you can definitely update the backlog from that regard. And then another item that you can have here in regards to governance is risk identification and issue identification and resolution. And you can have a process here listed as to how you identify the risks, to think about how you're going to mitigate those risks, the tasks that would be involved to mitigate those risks once they become issues. And here is the communication plan. Right here, you'll have a summary of the purpose of the meeting, which is there on the left. And you want to make sure that you have the participants listed. You want to have the frequency listed there, as well as the topic and who owns that meeting. So this here, listing out the overall communications, is very critical because then the team understands when exactly the meetings will be happening and what the expectation of each particular meeting is. Next, of course, is the project schedule. You want to have at least a high-level schedule here, and you can have it listed out by sprint or waterfall or whatever method that you're working on. If you do it by sprint, I found that a good idea is that for each sprint there on the bottom, you want to map out the scope of each particular sprint. Now, if you're in a situation where you do not have a project schedule yet, you're in an analysis phase and you need further discussion before you can come to a detailed execution project plan, you're going to need something here that's kind of a plan to get to a plan. And what I mean by that is you don't have your sprints mapped out because you don't know any of the requirements. But at least what you want to do for the first few weeks is that you need a plan here that shows what are the upcoming activities. If you need to gather requirements, you need to list that here, how long that would take, and what's the expectation to start doing the execution. So you want to have that at least. You don't want to come into a kickoff session not describing what the upcoming next actions are. And then the next one is just basically a QA roundtable. And what you do here is that you gain feedback from the overall presentation. You mark down the actions. As a PM, you need to mark down any actions that are coming from this session that need to take place. Even if it's not your actions, you have to note who has what action and when they'll be following up. So you definitely need to keep track of this. You want to send out a follow-up email with meeting notes or a summary of what was discussed in the kickoff deck session. So in that way, there's no confusion. And if you have some people on the call who are pretty quiet, you can actually go around the room and get individual feedback. This encourages everyone to give feedback or raise concerns, and you avoid the situation where certain people are not speaking up. And that's basically it for this roundtable slide. And then one last slide here is that we have the appendix of links. And what you want to do here is that you want to provide useful links, such as a site where the team is sharing documentation. You definitely want to provide that link so that all of the teammates on the project can access your shared documents. You want to let the team know where the project plans are located, requirements documentation, the action item document, also any Jira links. So any of these types of links or any other useful information that you can provide to your project team, you definitely want to list that here. So this becomes a one-stop reference if they want information.